Welcome, everyone, to SI Media with Jimmy Traina. Thank you so much for listening. We have an excellent episode for you this week. Kevin Clark from ESPN, the host of This Is Football with Omaha Productions, one of the best minds out there on the NFL. Get into Kevin transitioning sort of into a TV role, the art of interviewing, a lot of NFL topics, Tom Brady's debut, Bill Belichick as a media person, what's going on with Hard Knocks after the Giant debacle in week one. A lot of topics with Kevin about sports media and then the NFL. Following Kevin, my weekly Train of Thought segment with my buddy Sal Licata. We get into some week one thoughts on the NFL, do a full break. A lot of people have tweeted me asking if I was going to discuss the Sopranos documentary that aired last weekend. We discussed that heavily and also react to the trailer for the Vince McMahon documentary coming up on Netflix. So all that in Train of Thoughts with Sal. Before we get to it, quick reminder, if you've missed any recent episodes of SI Media with Jimmy Traina, go into the archives. We've had some great guests, great podcasts over the last several weeks. Scott Van Pelt from ESPN was on last week. Brian Curtis from The Ringer 2 weeks ago. Kirk Herbstreit from ESPN and Amazon. And Chris Mad Dog Russo, all recent guests on SI Media with Jimmy Traina. So give those a listen. Subscribe to the podcast. That's the most important thing. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Rate and review on Apple, and we'll read those on an upcoming episode. All right, let's get to it. Kevin Clark, followed by Train of Thoughts, all right here, right now, on SI Media with Jimmy Traina. All right, joining me now, always a fun conversation when he joins the podcast. He is from ESPN. He used to be at The Ringer, a couple other places, and he is the host of the very entertaining This Is Football. NFL season means we get Kevin Clark on. Kevin, how's it going?
I am so excited to talk about actual football and have actual games.
Yeah, people complain like the games are bad. That doesn't bother me in the least. Like, it's on. I have football on my TV. I'm happy even if it's bad.
We're going to be praying. And there's this whole thing. And listen, I'm as up for making fun of football as anybody. But like I saw, we're sending Giants Panthers to Germany. Oh, what a horrible thing. I'm going to tell you something, guys. On May 3rd, you would kill for Giants Panthers. You would drive 11 hours in the middle of the night for one snippet of Giants Panthers. When it's not like, this is what we live for, guys.
I have no problem with that game because it led to a tweet a couple of days ago. I don't know if you saw it, that made me actually do a real LOL and not the fake one, because someone tweeted, "Oh my God, it's going to be Giants Panthers in Germany. What did they do to deserve this?" And someone responded, "You know exactly what they did." So that alone makes it worthwhile. Before we get into the NFL, let me get into some stuff with you about, because you made a change. You went from The Ringer,
I did,
to ESPN. We're seeing you on TV, Omaha, Around the Horn, and First Take. Did you always want to get into TV, or is it just you're at ESPN, you have to get into TV?
So it's been a little over a year since I joined Omaha and ESPN, and it was amazing. And the show This Is Football is done pretty much all through Omaha. And then the TV part of it, the answer is yes. I've always wanted to do it. I've wanted to do it since I was 3 or 4 years old, since I knew what that was. And since I used to go on Fridays, and I'm even surprised this existed, but I used to go on Fridays with my elementary school, broadcast, whatever we would do, like the morning announcements, and I would do college football picks. I was pretty good, actually. I was pretty good at predicting, random 90s Florida State games. But that's always what I wanted to do, and those were my heroes. And I was lucky enough. My parents were local newspaper reporters, and so you kind of got to meet a lot of heroes early on and understand kind of what it took. Like, I met Stuart Scott. I have a picture of Stuart Scott from when I was 7 or 8 years old. I met him at an event in Chicago that my dad happened to be working at. Just friendly stuff, and they're nice enough to take photos. I grew up in Orlando, so you'd see Lee Corso all the time, and I'd always know that this is what I wanted to do. And there's no guarantee on that. There's no guarantee on anything. I started a different route. One thing I'd never considered was going traditional TV route, trying to be an anchor somewhere, or trying to be a sideline reporter somewhere. I never tried to do that because I felt like, and if I had a strength, it was writing. So I could go on that avenue. Started at the Wall Street Journal out of college, just didn't do any TV, did a tiny bit of podcasting. And then The Ringer starts, and that's podcasting, that's writing, that's video. I mean, The Ringer is an amazing place to work because they'll let you do whatever medium fits the story. They'll let you do. And it was a creative sandbox, and there are amazing people there. And so that's where it started to change. Where I was like, oh, you know what? The thing I've wanted to do since I was 3, it's actually becoming more of a possibility. And there were people who put me on when I was there. Katie Nolan was actually the first person to ever put me on TV, with the exception of one stray Sports Center hit when I was at the Journal. And then like Cowherd put me on a bunch when I was at the Ringer. And so it became more and more of a possibility. But yeah, that was always it. I don't think there's been a day in my life where it wasn't the goal to be on sports television in some way. Now, I probably like to write more than I do now,
Right.
but it was always in the back of my head.
What was it like doing First Take for the first time? Was Stephen A on the day you were on?
No.
Okay.
So I was doing Get Up a handful of times during the summer, and there was someone had an issue over the weekend, and so I was able to come on right after I did Get Up, and it is a really fun experience, a really really fun experience, and it's so different tonally from Get Up. And Get Up is so fun and so amazing. And I was lucky enough over the summer to do it with some of the funniest guys in the business. We were talking about Dominique Foxworth and Swagoo, and Ryan Clark was on, obviously Greeny. And we just had an amazing time. Damien Woody at one point. With First Take, it's funny because I have these really strong takes that I love and I've always wanted to get out. And I've always had to guard it a little bit because I was a reporter at the Wall Street Journal, and I learned very early on that, hey, it doesn't matter. It's only what the reporting says. I know you think that the Browns stink. I know you think Deshaun Watson stinks, but you got to make 15 calls before that. But you better get this coach on the phone and this OC on the phone. Now I do that. But you don't necessarily need to publish the 1,200 word story, the newser, in order to say your opinion. And the one thing I think that Around the Horn helped me with, Jimmy, was just saying, like, this is what I mean. I'm going to say what I mean. I'm not going to say I talked to 11 people and this is what they said. I'm going to say what I mean. And that's been the biggest change for me over the past year. And I think going on First Take was even further that, because I'm just going to say exactly what I mean. I'm not going to lay up. I'm not going to hold back. I have these opinions. I know the game. I know the sport, whether that's college or pro football. I am confident in those opinions, and I can just let it rip. And I think that's when you have a strong opinion backed up, that's the most powerful thing in this industry. It's not the worst thing is a strong opinion not backed up. And then the second best thing, or the third best thing the second best thing is a lukewarm opinion backed up. But a strong opinion backed up, which is, I feel like, is something I can specialize in, is something I feel like I've grown in the last year. And going on those shows, that's only helped.
If I was your ESPN boss and I came to you and I said, Kevin, we want to try to get you a lot more reps and make you a regular part of a show, and it could be Get Up, First Take, or Around the Horn, which would you want it to be?
I'm going to tell you. You forget Up. I have to wake up at 4 a.m. So I did it six times in July. I live right north of the city. It takes me 20 minutes to get in with no traffic. I'll take that every day. No, I loved my experience on Get Up. Mike Greenberg is the man, and he made it so easy. And just like the laughter that goes there, and just the energy that lets you experiment, and like you're kind of just riffing after a while. And I'll give you a good example, Jimmy. Like, we were making fun of the White Sox, and right afterwards, Greeny read a Little League World Series teaser, and I don't know when the break is. I don't know anything, but I just kind of butt in to the teaser and say, "Are the White Sox in this?" And it got huge laughs, but it was like, I don't think I would have done that. I'd be scared of my own shadow 18 months ago, certainly. But then, like, once you're on the show, you're just like, you know what? This is the environment, and we can laugh. And Swagoo is going off on this, and Ryan Clark's going off on this, and Dominique is making fun of me for this. And like, we're all just busting on each other. And I think that's like my first episode with the full gang, I checked my phone after the first break and I had 5 texts from Dominique Foxworth and Swagoo making fun of me and like making fun of my tie. And it's like, that's the ethos of the show that I think is a really, really fun thing.
That's a good line with the White Sox. It's a good line.
It was also, I had like 8 coffees, woke up at 4 a.m. Let's just go. Let's just make fun of the White Sox, Jimmy.
So is the plan to get you on TV more at ESPN?
Yeah. So I don't probably,
No.
like, I'm so happy with the Omaha stuff. I would not be surprised if the Omaha show was on TV, was on ESPN. I would not be surprised by that at all. I would not be surprised by that if that was.
It should be.
I would not be surprised if that was happening this coming Tuesday. And so, hypothetically, who's to say? But
I'll tweet it right. Let me tweet it right now. Kevin Clark's This Is Football will now be on ESPN.
I think
ESPN 2 probably.
ESPN 2 on Tuesday.
You better have a good guess. I mean, you've been loaded with Aikman and Kirk Herbstreit.
Kirk Herbstreit the first 2 weeks. Yeah, we're gonna weave a lot of those guys in. It'll be really fun. We're gonna do something a little different for the episode. But I think so. But like, I just take the opportunities as they come, and that's the one thing that I think is most special about this. And what I've been able to do is like, I don't really have expectations. And when they allowed me to do NFL Live starting in May, like it was the coolest thing in the world. And Mina Kimes is one of my best friends in media. I know Dan Orlovsky really well. I know Laura Rutledge now really well. And like, to take those opportunities that they come, I'm in see the ball, hit the ball mode. It's not like, I was at the front office sports thing yesterday and Stephen A. Smith was there. And Stephen A. Smith is, if you've ever heard him talk, if you're a media creator and you've ever heard Stephen A. Smith talk, you can't not come away with a change perspective. And like, I've heard him talk about this before, but when he was out of opportunities, I don't know, he would describe it more harshly than me, in 2010 or 2011, he hired an executive to teach him the industry because he wanted to know why he didn't have any offers. And then when he came back, he wanted to know 2 things: how to make money for his bosses and how to get that money. And that's literally what he said. He said that at this conference, and I heard him at a Barrett Sports Media conference a couple months ago. But like, he literally went out of his way to learn the business side of the industry so he could understand the talent side. And, he was talking yesterday at this thing about how the different things he wants to do, and MNF Countdown, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just sitting there being like, I am so far away from that. He is the GOAT. Stephen A is the GOAT. And it's like, I got about 20 years until I can sit there and say, I want to do this show, because what I want to do is just get better every day. And that sounds like a cliche athlete thing, but like, that's it. And like, that could be college football. It's going to be 95% NFL football, but I really love college football. And I was just talking to somebody, and I was like, listen, I'm going to talk about college football extemporaneously with my friends. I might as well, do a couple hits for you guys. Golf, which I was able to do, was on the ESPN Plus PGA Tour coverage, including being able to walk with Scotty Scheffler a couple months ago at the Travelers. That was really cool. And so for me, it's just like, I don't know. I'm not in a mode of being like, this is my 5-year TV plan. I don't know. I've got my Omaha show I do 3 times a week. I want to do, that's the only thing for me that's on the schedule every single week. Everything else is extra. And like, the only thing I can do is work my ass off when I get those opportunities and deliver a perspective. It was funny. I texted Orlovsky the night before my first get up, and I said, what do I do? And he said, it's very simple. He just said, be different than everybody else on TV, which I know you can do. And I think there's something to that, and I think there's something to, if you're that different, you have no competition. Does that make sense? Where it's like,
the people who do well in this business are the people who are different.
Right. And it's like, simple. we have 3 people up for this job, and it's the same type of reporter or same type of opinionist. And it's like, if you actually, and I'm certainly not there yet, but I'm trying to develop a voice to where you're so different that you're one of one. And I think that if there's any goal, it's that, is to be different than anybody else on TV. It is not, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. It's that's not, there's too many things where I've thought, this is the goal. And it was not the goal, right? When I was at the University of Miami, I desperately wanted to work for the Miami Herald. Got to work for the Sun Sentinel up the road, much better thing. When I was at the Wall Street Journal, there was a time I desperately wanted to work for the New York Times. Didn't work. Guess what? That ended up being totally fine. Like every time I've thought something was going to be the be all end all for my career, it just wasn't. And so now I'm in the mode where I'm just like, like let's just see the ball, hit the ball, and then go from there. Because I don't think any of us are smart enough to know, as you know, like the Wayne Gretzky thing, where the puck will be. It just do a good job every single day and earn it, and good things will happen.
I want to get into the This Is Football Omaha show, and then obviously some NFL. But I want to just piggyback on what you're talking about here, because it's interesting. I had Brian Curtis on 2 or 3 weeks ago from The Ringer. Brian Curtis.
Don't know. No, he's one of my best friends.
You got me with that. And it was coming off of a Jet preseason game where Peter Schrager was the analyst with Iron Eagle, who was doing play-by-play, and sort of a narrative came out of that about, could we ever see a non-ex player as an analyst? Now, listen, a non-ex player is never going to be in a lead booth or the second booth at CBS or Fox. But Brian and I were talking about, and other people have talked about, like, okay, you're the fifth crew at Fox, the sixth crew at Fox. Brian had brought up Mina, who you mentioned, which put it in my head. We're talking about Schrager. I think you'd be a guy, college football, NFL, who could be in a booth as an analyst without being an ex-player, because you know so much of the game. Do you think we'd ever see that, or you think networks are too afraid?
I mean, I would do it. I would love to do it.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you, college or pro. That would be fun. I do believe you've written this in the past, that I should be in a booth, and that was very appreciated by my parents. But that was one thing they sent around to their entire family, our entire family. I would love to do it. It's, again, not on my career goals list, but it's the type of thing where I do think, because if I have any strength, it's my work ethic on TV. I think the preparation is so important here, and knowing the stuff, and knowing, hey, and the one thing about TV, Jimmy, is that you have to prepare for. It was fun. I actually just talked to a coach about this, and he was like, "What's TV like?" And I said, "It's just like coaching, where you're prepared. You might prepare for 5 hours for one line, line, and you're looking at tape and saying, can I make this joke off the top on around the horn? When they go to me about Drake May, should he start or Jacoby Brissett, I may take hours looking over one thing just to make sure it's 100% correct. And so I think that work, if you're prepared, it shows up somewhere. And I think that carries over into a booth where it's like, hey, I honestly, so not to harp in on the college part, but like, I just sit around looking at recruiting rankings. And my wife roasted me the other day. We were flying to the Miami, Florida game in Gainesville, and she said, "You want to watch a movie?" And I said, nah, I'm not going to watch a movie. It's a Thursday before the game. She goes, "Are you going to look at high school stats instead?" And I was like, "Yes, but you didn't have to say that. You didn't have to say that."
That's that might be a bit much. That might be a bit much.
No, she meant like recruiting rankings.
Yeah.
But and also because I was looking at the rosters and all that stuff. But like that stuff shows up, and I'm a genuine sports dork to where I'm interested in everybody's story. And if someone like my favorite thing about football is that everything weaves together, and that Patrick Mahomes cannot do his job unless Creed Humphrey does his job, and that Creed Humphrey is able to do his job because a high school coach 15 years ago said this, and this. Like every step, I mean, it really is the Al Pacino Inches speech, right? Like it really is that. And that's what I love about it. But what I also love about it is you can just follow these threads forever and ever and ever. And because of that, and you can just find out stuff you never knew before. Because of that, you can tell people stories you've never heard before. And again, it goes back to what I'm talking about being different than anybody on TV. Like I just want to be able to bring a perspective where it's like, okay, and I think like Buck and Tarico are both really good at this, where they know the stories so well that they're able to say, "Oh, Sam Hubbard got this interception. I can tell you about this," and that's a gift. And I've never been in a booth. I've never even attempted it. They didn't let me do that in my elementary school broadcast when I was doing Florida State picks. But I do think that there's, I think anything, if you work your ass off enough, can work out for you.
All right. Well, hopefully the executives pay attention and we get a non-ex player in a booth one of these days, because I think it would be an interesting listen. Let's talk about This Is Football that you do with Omaha. like I said, your last two guests have been Kirk Herbstreit, Troy Aikman. Because I do this, I am fascinated by people who do interviews and what their process is.
Mm.
When you have big A-list guests like those two guys, what is your prep like? Are you doing hours of prep? Do you try not to over prep? Do you write out questions? Do you just write bullet points?
Yeah.
Take me through it.
Typically borders on hours. The biggest thing for me, so when I used to go into NFL locker rooms to the Wall Street Journal, you get like 3 or 4 questions with these guys and you can't screw it up. And I remember being on the phone one time with Russell Wilson and I had 15 minutes with him and I asked the wrong question and he just filibustered me for 8 minutes. And it was about like mental toughness. And I really like Russell Wilson. I don't want you to come away from that, but he'll filibuster you if you let him filibuster you.
Right.
And he's, I said, I think I asked about mental toughness. He started talking about like the different like wellness companies he owns or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, this interview's cooked. And so, and so you can't be wrong in that stuff. You can't ask the wrong question. And so what I tend to do is the good news about 2024, 2023 is that all of these guys have a ton of interviews out there and you can tell. So the best example I can give is Steve Young, who came on at the Super Bowl and was phenomenal. Maybe one of the best long form guests we ever had. I think we ended up having him for an hour. I saw him at the owners meetings. We had a great embrace. So he'll probably come on this season. Okay. And what I was able to do is Steve Young talks every week on KNBR in San Francisco, and they're all on podcasts. And so I'm walking from, it's at the Super Bowl. I'm walking from wherever we were staying, MGM, walking from MGM to Mandalay Bay and back every day. And there was one day where I was like, I've got an hour here. I'm just going to, listen. If Steve Young's on Wednesday or whatever it is, every time I'm walking, I'm going to listen to more Steve Young podcasts. And I'm listening to every interview he had done. And the reason I did that is because you want to understand what he's into. What does he want to talk about? How does he like to talk about things? There are so many times. I don't know if I've ever told the story. I heard Lincoln Riley on a podcast 5 years ago, after the Eagles Patriots Super Bowl. And he said, the Super Bowl is like a Big 12 game to me. And the interviewer just moved on. And then he kind of brought it up again. The interviewer moved on again. And I'm like, damn, Lincoln Riley really wants to talk about how this looks like a Big 12 game. And so I called Lincoln Riley, and sure enough, I think he called me that day and was like, oh my God, let me tell you all the schemes they had, the blah, blah, blah. And like, he was great. And I built a whole story around it. But that's the kind of thing I like to do is you can tell when guys are energetic about a subject. And if I'll give you a great example. Steve Young was really energetic about Taylor Swift and how the Chiefs made Taylor Swift a superpower. Now, selfishly, that's a clip that's going to go on social. That's great. But he also has clearly thought about it and clearly put in the work. And so for me, it's about understanding who these guys are, because when I used to do, same as when I used to do the prep with players in the locker room, I need to understand what they want to talk about. And now I will ask really tough questions and I'll have to put it to them and let them say it, like they're, especially when it's Slow News Day, when we do This Is Football, there are times I had Tua on, the year he had his concussion. I had to ask how he was feeling. I had to. We can talk about whatever he was, I think in the same interview, we're talking about him changing diapers and how he's good at it or whatever. That's fine, but I can't not ask about those situations. Right. But I think that if you're looking for the best interview possible, we have so much data on who these people are with podcasts and social and all that stuff. If you don't exhaust all options in your research prep, then you're going to come in cold and it's going to be a pretty bad interview. And so the most important thing is to get these guys in, and in minute one, if you have 20 minutes with them, make them feel like it's, the 45th time they've been on your show.
Do you see, that's interesting you say that, because I hate doing an interview if they say 20 minutes. I feel like it's too much pressure. You can't get going. If it's someone you don't know, I'll give you an example. I have someone booked coming up who I've never had on, and the PR people were like, 30 minutes hard out. And I said, okay, that's fine, but then can we start a couple minutes early, because I've never spoken to this person before. Right. I need to say hello, and you do the formalities. That takes 5 minutes. Now you're down to a 25-minute interview, and if you've never had this person on, you have a whole litany of stuff you want to ask them. So I get very hung up on the time of interviews. Are you that way with your interviews?
Nope. I'm just my old editor at the Wall Street Journal, Sam Walker, used to say you are never allowed to complain about access. And if you are complaining about access, that's the sign of a bad story. And I've always taken that to heart. And if Aaron Rodgers won't talk to you, even though I like him, but like it's a bad example. If Tom Brady won't talk to you, I've never talked to Tom in my life. Go talk to one of the Devin McCourty. Go talk to Julian Edelman. Go talk to Matthew Slater. Just go find the story there. So I've always felt that. The other thing, Jimmy, that I've been able to do, I have this little trick, and it's going to be so inside baseball to anybody who's not a print reporter. But my thing is always showing the guys I've done the work in a non-braggadocious way. And so like there was this years ago at the Super Bowl, I was doing a Chris Hogan piece, and I called his lacrosse coach and his football coach and all that stuff. And those risers are awful at the Super Bowl, awful. And Chris Hogan is at one, and he's giving non-answers, Patriot Way stuff to everybody. And I'm like, I got to cut through here, man, because I got this story and I don't have any Chris Hogan on. I'm not going to get him because this is a rough week and the story's due tomorrow. And so all I prefaced the question with to Chris Hogan was, hey, Chris, I was just talking to whatever the high school coach's name was. And his eyes kind of lit up. And then he gave me great stuff. And then he went right back to the non-football or the non-answers, right? And I think he looked at me, said, this is a guy who isn't just trying to get a quote for Twitter. And we're there, and now I can answer the question. And so I've always felt comfortable in confined spaces with access and saying, I have one question to get this. I can do this. I can figure this out. I spend a lot of time on the front end thinking about it, as I described a little bit earlier. And so that to me is something I'm comfortable with. I'm good with. If someone says there are times someone says you have 10 minutes and you got to do a plug, fine, bring it on.
You're a better man than me.
I can do that.
I kill those. I say no to all of those. You're a much better person than me.
I just feel like there's ways to get it. And also, frankly, as much as I want to build around the best episodes possible, Jimmy, like in this era, if you get 2 clips from a show, which you can get in 10 minutes, that can be a win.
Yeah. But I won't. Yeah. I guess I still look at this as, for me, as an audio thing. So yeah, I can get 2 clips maybe in 10 minutes. I don't know. I feel like 10 minutes, I can't get anything. So you're better than me. Random Chris Hogan story. He lives on Long Island. He was behind me once in line at a Target a couple of years ago.
There you go.
There you go. So in doing research about subjects like you talked about and digging deep, I have to say, before we get to some football topics, I love what goes on with your dad when you're on TV. This is my favorite stuff. It seems like Dad's very concerned with your appearance.
So he is. So my dad is an amazing person, and he's really funny, and both my mom and my dad are huge sports fans, casual sports fans, but huge, love watching the game. My mom's a huge college football fan. My dad loves pro more than college, but watches basically every game. And in Florida, college football is a religion, so everybody follows it anyway. My dad is obsessed with ties, suits and ties. Owns a lot, has a walk-in closet at home. And so there's 2 things I do for him. Number one is I wear a tie every time I'm on linear television, every single time. If you see me without a tie, it is because something went wrong or I was coming from someplace and I didn't have a tie. I will wear a tie every single time I'm on Get Up, Around the Horn, First Take, whatever it is. If I'm on linear television, you will see me with the tie. And so and the other thing I do is he gifted me I couldn't afford it, a Mont Blanc pen from years ago. He's had it for 50 years, and I always keep it in my hand. If you see it on Around the Horn, it's my signal to him that I'm thinking about him, and all that stuff. So those are the 2 things. But what's funny about the tie thing? So my dad will literally, and I think this is what you're referring to. I made my Get Up debut, and Kevin Negandhi was next to me, and Kevin Negandhi was wearing the best suit I've ever seen, tightest, greatest tie knot in the world. And I'm just like trying to get my notes together, making sure I don't screw up on my Shane Waldron analysis. And my dad just sends me a text that says, "You were great. Tie your tie like the host." And I was just like, "Oh wow, what a compliment sandwich." And so now, I will get anytime my tie is loose, whatever. He's one of my biggest fans, and so it's always funny when he's like, "Oh, you're so great," blah blah blah. Having said that, your tie was a little loose today, and so I always get the feedback, or hey, you shouldn't wear that shirt with this suit, that kind of thing. And so it's always very very funny. I like wearing ties. I think it just I look a little young. And so I think it's important to sort of.
So I'm surprised your dad hasn't asked you to like check in before the appearance with the outfit.
I think that's probably next. If next time I go up against Nagandi, like, how am I supposed to compete against Kevin Nagandi? How am I supposed to compete?
Listen, I don't understand why anyone on sports TV wears coats and ties. So the fact that you're showing up on a tie, give you need a suit and tie to talk about the fact that Deshaun Watson stinks. I don't understand it, but that's just your dad would not like me on TV. That's for sure. So when you're done with the TV appearance, is the first thing about the wardrobe or about what you've said on TV? What does Dad do for?
It's both. He's a huge supporter of mine. He's very funny when he's like, he'll be like, or sometimes I won't shave for a while, or my hair gets too. It was funny. My hair got really long over the summer, and I saw Harry Douglas in the hall at Seaport. He was doing Get Up. I was doing Around the Horn. And he just goes, "You were so great on, I think it was NFL Live last week." And I said, which day? And he goes, "The day you look like a serial killer." And I was like, "Oh no, come on, man."
It is amazing. You get on TV and everything just gets picked apart.
100%.
The power of TV it's still insane to this day. I mean, everyone wants to talk about digital. The power of TV is still insane. Speaking of the power of TV,
yes,
I got to ask you. Mm-hmm. Can't not ask you because I haven't discussed it yet on the podcast. I feel like everyone prefaces it. It's ridiculous to judge a guy after one game. Uh-huh. What did you think of Brady?
I thought that he showed signs of somebody who's going to be really, really good at this. And the reason is I think he's going to approach it like he's a player. And the best analysts approach it like they're players. And you see this all the time. I did not know Troy Aikman. The feedback I got when I booked him was he treats us like he's a player. He's going to show up. I think we booked him for 10:30, whatever it was. He's going to show up at 10:29:59. He's going to be there. He's going to be ready. He's going to be prepped. He has your topics. He's going to be ready to go because he treats this as if he's game planning for the Eagles that weekend. And I think that's special. I think Kirk Herbstreit is like that. It was funny. I was on a Zoom with some ESPN people a couple of weeks ago, and some NFL officials were kind of briefing us on some of the changes this year. And I was texting with some of my friends about how surreal it was at ESPN. Surreal it is to see Randy Moss's Zoom camera off, and it's just Randy's iPad or whatever. Right. And we were talking about the different ones, and somebody said, Teddy Bruschi's camera's off, but I guarantee you Teddy Bruschi is sitting there with a notepad and paper, taking notes as if he's game planning for third down against the Bills this week. And I've never really been around Teddy. And sure enough, questions are they open it up for questions. Teddy turns his camera on. He's got a ton of questions. He's got his notepad out. He is locked in because he's treating this. He treats everything. They always say like practice like you play. The best analysts, Aikman, Troy, Teddy Bruschi, Kirk Herbstreit, they treat analysis like they're playing. And I think that Tom Brady has that kind of gene. Dominique Foxworth, I think, very similar, where he is as smart as it comes as a player, and then he sees the game the same way as an analyst. I don't know. Did you see the Steve Spurrier clip a couple weeks ago?
No, I did not.
So Spurrier is on a radio show in Gainesville, and they said, "What do you think about the SEC this year?" And he starts talking about how he likes Jalen DeBoer, which is not the coach's name. His name's Kalen, but he says that twice. And then he starts giving analysis of the Alabama-Texas game, which is not happening this year. That game does not exist. And it's like, I love Steve Spurrier, but he rolls off a golf course, seems like he respects the punditry game very much, and it shows. It always shows. And so I think when you come into it and again, that's not, we love the old ball coach in Florida. I'm not even a Gator fan, but I have a lot of respect for him. But like, I think a lot of times, the guys who don't dial down the intensity are the guys who have the best success in media from the players that I've been around. And I feel like Brady's going to be wired like that.
Yeah. I wondered, it almost came across to me like, I mean, listen, in the beginning he was nervous, and that's fine. And that's to be expected. But then he did get more comfortable. But the vibe I got was, I feel like there may have been too many people giving him too much advice, too many notes, too many practice games, too many people in his ear. And I think he's just let it rip. That was my vibe when I heard that game. Now, again, in first game, everyone, and also an unwatchable, horrible game for him to broadcast. So he wasn't helped by that.
I agree, and I think another Cowboys game this weekend, I believe.
Yeah, against the
No,
Saints.
I just that game was just such a, he was able to diagnose some stuff as far as Micah Parsons and stuff like that, but
Right.
it was poor quarterback play, and I think there's ways to criticize guys without doing, I mean, I think one of the coolest things right now, Jimmy, have you seen Breakdown, the Belichick Peyton Manning thing?
I saw a clip. I saw
Yeah,
Belichick. I mean, we can get into this, but Belichick has been
really
great.
good.
Belichick has been great
really-
everywhere. He's
I
been great
agree.
everywhere.
The Manning cast was phenomenal, and Breakdown is funny, and I feel this way. There's a credibility. The reason Brady's going to be good is because he takes it seriously, but also there's a credibility there where his words
Right.
always matter. That's true of Saban. That's true of Belichick. When I was at the Miami game in Gainesville a couple weeks ago, I was at a lunch spot, and Saban had just picked us on game day, and there were a couple Miami fans in line at the lunch spot, and it was like, we all won Powerball. I was like, ooh, Saban picked us because there's a credibility there. Because it's Nick's the greatest coach of all time.
Yeah.
And with Belichick, with his breakdown show, first of all, it's phenomenal. The way they get into the weeds is absolutely awesome. But then beyond that, one little line tells you more than so many other guys can tell you. And so with Belichick breaking down the Jets defense, it was an unbalanced play against the Chiefs, I think it was. And Belichick says something to the effect of, normally there'd be an adjustment here. And it's like, the tone, whatever, like the sarcasm. And I think there was one point where he was just like, I don't like this picture defensively again. And even like on the offensive side of the ball, he's like, I really wouldn't throw a fade to Sauce Gardner here. It's just he's not ever going to be the guy who just torches in the same, in the same way that there are other people on podcasts who do all the time. But what he will say, he will bring an intensity that he brought to football to that show, and it will be as meaningful as anything in the sport when he says it.
He may not torch, but he torches in his own way.
Yes,
because
exactly.
He's been phenomenal. Right off the bat, he's had 3, I think, great moments. One was, I wrote about this on Tuesday. He told a great story on his Sirius XM show with Jim Gray about when he was a coach of the Browns. The Cowboys came into Cleveland and beat them. After the game, Belichick says to Jimmy Johnson, you have any tips on, what we can do better, how we can improve? And Jimmy goes, we didn't even prepare for you guys. You guys are terrible. We prepared for the Redskins. They were the Redskins back then. Then the other thing was, he was the only person in the entire media who said, pump the brakes on Caleb Williams. His accuracy is a problem. Caleb Williams was so bad on Sunday. And the only person who said it was Belichick. And the last thing was he did something yesterday with McAfee, or on Monday. And now it's out of my head and I feel like a dope. But he's had 3 great moments. Oh, that was the thing, the Will Levis interception for the Titans, where he said, him and Tom used to say, okay, forget that it's a bad play. Let's say you complete it. What are you getting? A yard or 2? It's not worth the risk. So he's been great already in his first week, Belichick.
You're preaching in the choir. I think he's so good. I think he sees the game in a way no one else ever has. And his insights have always been good. And I think that's even when, and I don't think people necessarily get it, because it was always funnier to focus on the Insta face type stuff at press conferences or his death stares. He would give these breakdowns of the history of the sport that were just phenomenal. And you could get a history lesson and you could parse it in some ways where you could learn about the current team. I think a lot of times he wouldn't say stuff because at that very moment it would be a distraction to the team or whatever, which is what every coach does. I talk to a lot of coaches off the record all the time about all sorts of stuff. And I can guarantee you only about 3% of the things they really say ever bubble up into a press conference. And that's not unique to any coach. It is universal. And so I think he's always had this in him. It's just, you got to watch, 5 press conferences per week for maybe 2 or 3 nuggets. Now it's just the nuggets, and we're so much smarter. And I've always wanted this. I've always wanted Saban and Belichick, and hopefully at some point Andy Reid, although for Patrick Mahomes' sake, maybe later down the road. I'm surprised Pete Carroll can't do any media or isn't doing any media because he's just so good at it. These guys have so much knowledge. And I'll give you a good example. During the Manning cast, they were running away. The Niners were running away from Quinnen Williams. And I don't know, man. Like, I just don't feel like we see a lot of analysis where someone's just like, he said they're running from the three technique and met Quinnen Williams. Like, I just don't feel like when I'm watching a random 1 p.m. game that they even mention that kind of individual analysis where they're saying, hey, all of their players are going away from Quinnen Williams, blah, blah, blah. Like, sometimes you get that in the most vague sense or whatever. I think Belichick's saying it directly. I think he's saying it in a way that is obvious and in real time. And by the way, the only other person who can diagnose plays as quickly as Bill Belichick is Peyton freaking Manning, and he's right there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just want to say one last thing on Brady, because I do think he's going to end up being great too. And I think it's the judgment on him after the one game is so unfair. But I'll say three things. One, I don't think Fox did him any favors. Fox promoted this and built this up like it was bigger than the game, the Brady debut. That didn't help. And then you have Greg Olsen putting on a clinic with the game leading into Browns Cowboys. Olsen had the Steelers Falcons game, which was a close game late. And, you're getting reminded. The perception, I think, from a lot of people is here's, big bad Tom Brady with 7 Super Bowls, good-looking guy, all the money in the world, and he's booting out poor Greg Olsen. And Olsen has become the best, second best, third best analyst in the sports. That doesn't help Tom. So I feel for Tom from those two standpoints. The other thing, I would pay money. I don't know how much, but I would pay money to find out. I would love to know if Tom read any of his reviews. Not just because I wrote one, just because if this guy is scrolling anywhere and it's, Tom Brady's, I would love to know if he clicked on any of them. Not that that's for you to answer because you don't know the answer.
No, I'm trying to think. Like, I mean,
the human nature of it is how do you not? Now, listen, if he has good people around him, they're going to say, don't click on anything. But, it's 10 o'clock at night and he's in bed and scrolling. And how do you not click?
The biggest thing for me, and we're in completely different levels, and Tom has gone through it as a player. The only time I get bothered by anything anybody writes, whether it's on Twitter or anywhere, some Giants message board or whatever, is if they're right. Like sometimes you'll see something and you're just like, this person just doesn't know what they're talking about. It's fine. And there's actually very little understanding, I think, on those things of our industry. Like when you just read like a Twitter thread about like, this is why, this TV network is doing this. Like, no, it's not. That's not the case at all. But if someone says something and they're like, I'm like, damn, they actually, on that take, they were right. I actually didn't think about that. That's where it hurts. But I think that and also that's part of just trying to get better, right? Is just internalizing that and be like, oh, they got me there. And that's when it stings. But if you go through it as a player for 20 years, and how much do you process the media after Deflategate, where you probably read so much of the stuff that just simply isn't true? That's not to dissolve from Deflategate, but it's like in any scandal, you read 100 things, you're just like, where did that come from? Or people who barely know you talking about you as if they know you. I don't know. I think you go one of two ways, and I know a lot of people in football who have gone. It's 0 or 100. Either they sit around scrolling Twitter, looking at every little interaction, or they haven't looked at it in 20 years. They really haven't.
Yeah,
and that's a big. I remember in one of the Tiger Woods books, maybe it was Hank Haney's, that on the way to the Masters after the Tiger Woods scandal, that they saw Tiger. And he was just scrolling through the internet, just looking at mentions of him. And it's like,
even Tiger Woods is looking at his mentions.
How can you not in some cases? But then you learn to toughen up. And I think we're all human in that regard. And so I don't know. I don't really know Tom Brady enough to know which direction he leans in.
This is a weird one. Mm-hmm. The Giants come out of the gate. They play as badly as any team in week 1. Panthers, Giants. The quarterback's an issue. Barkley scores 3 touchdowns for the Eagles. And we saw it all play out on Hard Knocks. And I had a thought. I was like, I wonder if this could be the end of Hard Knocks. If you're an NFL team, do you need that bullshit going on?
Well,
because
it's all-season Hard Knocks. It's the all-season Hard Knocks. The offseason Hard Knocks and the in-season Hard Knocks are a little different. And we've seen this before where like, the Hard Knocks had the Raiders and the Antonio Brown was the biggest story in the world. And the Raiders basically said, we're not going to do this. And so there was more control there. I think that the problem with the Giants is they handled their business abysmally when the HBO cameras and publicly when HBO was there. If you're going to cut loose your most popular player, my advice is don't have HBO there. So
and they had final edit.
So that's part of it. There's always, in the last decade, there's been a push-pull where the league is going to want to sell things. They're going to want access. They're going to want more access in an extremely paranoid sport. Extremely paranoid. And I think that you've seen that over and over and over again. Like, I think it's really cool. I'm a big Formula One fan. I think it's really cool you can hear real-time headset communication between driver and pit crew. You can hear that in a bunch of other sports, whatever. You can't do that with the NFL because of obviously the real-time element would get the competitive advantage. But like, I'll give you a great example. Okay. I did a story a couple of years ago about Joe Burrow and his deep passing. Defense is adjusted, so now he's actually really good at short passing, but he was really good at deep passing in his breakout year, Super Bowl year. And the story was the coaches told me that they had this guy, Daniel Sorensen, who was playing for the Chiefs, and there was a play they kept calling where Sorensen is not fast enough to get to the sideline on. It was not fast enough, so every time he would notice, it wasn't getting fast enough. So Burrow tells the coaching staff from the sideline, Daniel Sorensen cannot get enough width. Run that play again. I'm going to score a touchdown. Okay. So they tell me this story. I write it 8 months later. Presumably, through some communication, whether it's the phone or whatever, that was recorded. Presumably. I have no idea. But like, think about that would be one of the most iconic things you've ever heard in your life, right? That would be any Sports Center, any NFL. It might be the intro to Monday Night Football from now on. Like, it is so iconic, and that kind of access produces iconic moments. But the problem is that if you say Daniel Sorensen can't get the width on the field, I'm going to throw a touchdown, and then you throw an interception, you're like a clown. Or you don't want anyone thinking that Daniel Sorensen, they know that or whatever. It gets convoluted. But access is always going to grow the game. And so I am of the opinion that the NFL on some of the stuff is going to say, tough luck. We have to grow. We understand how to grow the game. And I once asked someone at the league office, I said, is there ever going to be a time where you guys don't give us the player access that is so great? Open locker room, all of this stuff. Because in Europe, tell you something, every newspaper is quoting Chelsea.com when they, whatever, they're not getting these players. And the person said to me, someone from the league office, they said, the difference is we're competing with other sports and we needed the attention. We need to dominate the attention economy. And maybe it would be easier, it would be easier on clubs or whatever to have less media access, but we don't want to find out because it could be a very expensive mistake. A very expensive mistake.
But you don't need 3 Hard Knocks. You don't need off season, in season, and then
I don't know, man. Like, the more access, think about how I do a podcast 3 times a week, but then twice a week in the off season, or once a week in July and June. And like, my life is made. Who was the guy? Was it Malik Hooker from the Cowboys who literally he's on active Cowboys player, literally ranked in the off season which players the Cowboys should pay first, and then like went at Micah Parsons, I think, for going on a podcast. And it's like, man, you just got 2 weeks of shows for everybody. NFL Network, Sports Center, like, thank God. And so the more there's like the Hard Knocks, all this stuff, it helps them in a weird way compete with baseball, with basketball, with hockey.
I wonder if teams are going to see what happened with the Giants though and be like, not for us. But if the league forces them to do it, they force them to do it.
Maybe.
All right. Before I let you go, like I said, I did do research. I believe you were at Pearl Jam at Madison Square Garden.
I was.
How was it?
Fantastic. Sitting very close to little Steven Van Zandt. Very close. And Henrik
Oh,
Lundqvist. I couldn't tell because I was in one section over. I think they were in the same row. I would love to know if either knew who the other person was. I
is
would
that
just love
like
to
a
know that.
perk of ESPN that you get good seats like
No,
that?
no, no, no. I didn't have seats, and then I was in. I didn't know it was the first week of the NFL season. I didn't buy tickets, and 5 hours beforehand, StubHub, the market was softening just a tiny bit, and I just
Yep.
decided to say
That's the
screw it.
trick. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was amazing. Ed screwed up the encore a little bit, too many slow covers, but that's nitpicking. They're an amazing band. I did
Was there a surprise guest? I thought I saw one of the
well, I
shows.
mean, Lil Steven went on there, and
He did.
yeah, and Andrew Watt. So Steven went on for Rockin' in the Free World,
Right.
and then but so I did a 7 hour podcast, um, uh, about Pearl Jam for the Ringer and Spotify actually this year. So after I
One
left.
episode, 7 hours, or did you break it up?
It's called Bandsplain, and it's
Okay.
phenomenal. And I'm frankly shocked at how many people ESPN executives, NFL executives. I mean, everybody listen to the show. I think it was 3 episodes. It's not my
Okay.
show, but I think they broke it up into it was
Yeah.
the different eras. But like I put that out there, and every guy I know over 45 has checked in with that. Like I had a really important NFL person that came out right before the draft. A really important NFL person. I wish I could say their name. Who
Roger
sent
Goodell.
me no, it was a team person who sent me a screen grab of him listening to it during draft weekend, and I said, "Is this what you? If you guys get bad picks, like you can blame
Right.
me on this." And he's like, "That's absolutely right." And so it was such a cool experience because Pearl Jam is just so universal, right? And like they're so um accessible. Like you can listen to the radio hits if you want, or you could just go like full Grateful Dead, like, oh, I love the State College bootleg, like that. It's an entry level. There's an entry level for everybody.
Do you know if the band got wind of that podcast?
So they put it in their newsletter. So
They did.
at least their management and stuff like that. They sent out an email
There
about
you
it.
go.
So
That had to be a nice little
yeah, I don't know
ego
if the
boost for you.
band members or whomever listen to it, but I know that they're aware of it.
Yeah. Madison Square Garden is still such a great place to see a concert.
And the roof is still the same.
Yeah.
I
I
love it.
hate Barclays. I hate UBS. I still love the Garden.
Yeah. No, it's really cool. It's a really
Yeah.
cool venue. It's really easy to get to. Prices are a little bit high, but that's the tax you pay on on the world's most famous
Got
arena.
that right. You got that right. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And we got This Is Football 3 days a week from Omaha. Great guests.
That's right.
Do you want to tease anyone coming up? I never tease anyone coming up because I feel like people can't. Yeah.
I
don't
still
like
have some ball. I still have some balls in the air.
And we'll see you on
And
Tuesday on ESPN too.
I'm trying to get, it's so funny. I'm trying to get more like coaches and players this year, like active coaches and players, but so much of it depends on whether or not the team wins or loses. And so it's really hard on that stuff. And it's easy if you're doing a radio show and it's like, oh, we lost this person. But for me, I do one guest per episode and it's like, I can't have anybody drop out on Monday night. So a lot of balls in the air on that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. I know that feeling. All right, Kevin, appreciate the season. I'm sure we'll have you back on later as we get deeper into the NFL. Thank you. Enjoy week 2.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, take it easy. All right, joining me now from WFAN Radio in New York, SNY TV in New York, for our weekly Train of Thoughts segment, my buddy Sal Licata. Sal, how are you after week 1 of the NFL?
Great. I'm excited to talk to you. I mean, look, I'm always excited to talk to you, but specifically after week 1 where I know we have a lot to get into.
How did the wagers treat you? Let's start with that.
I didn't win, but I was somewhat disciplined. So
Good.
I'm okay with that. I think I've got you. All right, I'm just going to get out of the gate and tell you how I watch the games, which you're probably going to be mad at me. But for work purposes, and I think just in general, it was healthier for me. I watched just the Giants game at 1 o'clock. And then at 4 o'clock, I went to the 4 box and had multiple stuff. So I'm trying a different way of watching football this year.
All right, listen. Don't try the bullshit here. I want to know exactly what you mean by the line healthier for me.
Because when I'm not focused just on the one game, that is where I'm most interested too, just because I've been talking about it for years now. It's the one thing I really do care about, the storyline with both the Giants and the Jets. But normally on an NFL Sunday, I look at the full slate. I'll be betting as many games as possible. And because you have the bets and action all over, you want to see more games and what's going on out of town. So it was just actually simple to just simplify and say, okay, one game at 1 o'clock. After that, I could open it up to the 4 o'clock games, which I did. It was fun.
I would kill myself. So you're telling me at 1 o'clock, you didn't watch one snap of any game except, like, even you stuck with it till the end.
Correct. I went,
God.
maybe with like 2 or 3 minutes to go or something. But yes, for the most part. And then maybe it was a little bit more than that, but 99% of the game. Once the game was officially over and there was like, let's say under 5 minutes, and then other stuff was happening around the league, the interesting finishes, I kind of checked in on those.
You don't think you could have handled watching the Giant Vikings game and the Falcons Steelers game at the same time?
No, I probably could have, but I'm telling you, it's different when you do what I do and you're on and you're talking to Giants and Jet fans. I can't allow anybody to know the team better than I do. And if I'm watching 4 games, I'll be honest with you, I don't know the game as well as they do because they're locked in on the one. So I kind of went old school. Could I have done it? Yes. Would I have been able to know the team and what happened? Absolutely. And I could have even gone back and watched it like I've done in years past, but I wanted to just try it a different way. And it was fun. Now, I can't promise that if the Giants suck all year long, that's going to be the case every time that they're on. But I want to watch Jets and Giants the way that I used to watch when I was younger, just an isolated game.
Don't ever invite me over there then on an NFL Sunday. Now, what are you going to do?
Giants and Jets are, playing primetime or off.
What are you going to do this Sunday when the Jets and Giants both play at 1 o'clock?
Well, that's an easy 4-box day. I have no choice, right? So
you need 2-box.
Well, I don't like the 2-box because the way that the screen is. The 2-box, you don't maximize the usage of the screen.
You need a thing. So this week you went 1 game only because you want to focus. Now, when you have 2 games that you need to focus on this week, you're going to go 4-box.
Well, yes, because of the way that it shows on the screen, the 4-box fills in nice in the quadrants. The 2-box is so much empty space. I'm not doing that. But
You're an absolute pisser.
You put the 2 games on, and you easily toggle back and forth between the sound.
All right, so now you have 2 other games now that you're going to mix in. You have Saints, Cowboys, Raiders, Ravens, Chargers, Panthers, Colts, Packers, Niners, Vikings, Browns, Jaguars, Seahawks, Patriots, Bucks, Lions.
I mean, I guess, what's the main 4 o'clock game in week 2?
It's Bengals, Chiefs.
So I guess what I could do technically is watch 1 at 1, 1 at 4. I didn't even think about that until you just brought it up. I could DVR one, like watch the Giants or watch the Jets, and then at 4 watch
Who is this Sal Licata on my podcast? I don't even recognize this individual. Where is my friend, goddammit?
I'm telling you that for you don't care. Like, you don't care about the Jets or the Giants.
Right.
So, but I'm telling you as somebody who does, that it's a lot easier and a lot less stressful than the full slate of Sunday.
Well, I care about the Jets this year because I bet they're over.
Okay.
And I also think they're going to be one of the better teams to watch this year. But I'm done with the Giants. I will not watch a single second of the Giants. I mean, that's just not happening now. I
get it. I get why. I shouldn't say you don't care about the Jets. You care about your bets first and foremost.
Exactly.
All right.
And the good games. And the good games, like the Bengals and Chiefs, I'll watch. I'm going to get locked in. It's funny. I tweeted out a picture because I had all 8 games going at once.
Right.
And someone said, like, how could you watch that? And your head would spin. Here's what I used to do. I mean, I'll look a couple of things. When DirecTV had Sunday Ticket, they had the channel with the 8 boxes.
Right.
I would put that channel on, the game mix with 8 boxes. I would take a bar stool and put it about 6 inches from my TV because it's nice and high, and sit there and watch all 8 games. And that was my heaven on earth. I loved it. Now,
but you watched it with bets on all the games or most of the games, right?
Yes and no. I mean, most of the games, yes.
Right. I think that's the way a gambler watches the games.
But I can here's what I still know. I know Caleb Williams played one of the worst games I've ever seen in my life. I watched. Right. I know that there's something seriously wrong with the Bengals. I know that the Bills rely on Josh Allen way too much. Like you can still get, and here's what I did. So I had 4 games on one TV, 3 games on another, and then 1 game on the other because the local game isn't part of the Sunday ticket. So that has to go on a separate TV.
Right.
Once halftime came, I got rid of the Giant-Viking game. I got rid of the Saints-Panthers game. Now I go 6 games, and then I focus where the focus needs to be.
Right. I'm not, like, I get it.
I flesh out games, and then I intensely focus on the closer games.
Understood. That's how I've watched games for almost 20 years. I can't, nor do I not, like, I got to be honest with you, I don't give a shit about the Cowboys and Browns. If I don't have a bet on it, I don't care. I had the game on for, I just don't care what happens in it. Even the Broncos or Seahawks, like unless I bet on them, I don't care. And it's not only my job, but because it's my job, it's also become my first care about. Like I care about the Giants storyline and how they play, and the same thing with the Jets. So it's different for sure. I'm definitely going to lose a little bit of the national interest. Although I'll tell you, I went back and watched the highlights of the Titans, Bears, and the Falcons and Steelers, just because I wanted to see what happened in those games. So I got a good enough feel for one on there. I could do that with all the other games. I don't necessarily care to take the time to do it. It's different, but
I watched a lot of Falcons Steelers. But yeah, I'm not coming over on Sundays. I mean, you have to watch Giants Commanders this week. It's just disgusting.
But there's a storyline in there that, yes, is it going to be good football? Probably not. But there's a great storyline from a New York perspective. Are the Giants actually going to be the worst team in the league and lose?
Oh, they're going to be they're in the bottom 5.
Yeah.
Well, that's for sure. It is funny that we were both on the Giants. We both love the Giants. And I kept saying, if you're listening to this podcast, bet the Vikings. And I did get a tweet on Sunday from a listener saying, thanks for telling me to bet the Vikings. So I'm glad we could help. I like helping the audience.
Good.
So you only watch the Giants. So I was going to ask you, so this question is moot. I was going to say, any week 1 observations from a television standpoint?
Meaning broadcast?
Well, yeah, anything you saw on Sunday on TV from announcers, anything you wanted to, anything stick out to you, or you got nothing? Yeah,
I mean, I'm afraid to, I first of all,
let it rip.
The play overall is flop in week 1. We've talked about that. Like
100%. You called that. You were dead on that. You called that. You said it here a couple of times. You were 100% right.
So the majority of overall, you expected to get better as we go on. So that was the first thing. I thought, you want to talk about Brady? I mean, I thought he was. Here's what I will say about Brady, and I made a point to watch that just to get a feel. Like my storyline for me, I was more curious about what Brady would be than I gave a shit about the game, the Cowboys and Browns.
Yeah.
And I would just say that while I don't think he was bad, and I read what you had to say about it and some other stuff, I felt like I was watching somebody who was learning on the job. And there's a reason for that. Because he's learning on the job.
He never did it before.
Be the case when you had Burkhardt and Olsen, who are as good of a team as you, like Fox stumbled across it. And then they forced with Brady. I get it. Because I'm watching because of Brady. Other people were interested. The ratings were mega because of Brady. But I don't like hearing somebody or watching somebody and hearing that he's learning on the job, especially when they had such a good tandem with Olsen.
Right. Did you watch the Sunday night game with Tirico and Collinsworth?
I saw some clips. I did not watch a lot of the game. I saw some clips to it. Collinsworth, did you tweet this about him using the word redonkulous, which...
Yeah, I put it. It was so cringe.
That's
so cringe.
That's the exact way to phrase. Like that's embarrassingly bad. Throw of the year in week 1, and to ever use like you're an adult and you're using the word redonkulous. Not only you're an adult broadcaster.
I don't listen. I'm not going to criticize him for that because I'm supposedly an adult and I say ridiculous things. But it was just so cringe in that moment when he used redonkulous to describe a throw. All right. How many fantasy leagues are you in?
1, and I didn't even really care about that, to be honest with you, which was great.
Do you have Christian McCaffrey?
I don't, no.
All right. I like all the hullabaloo about that. Just reminded me of why I never for a second have regretted giving up playing fantasy football.
I'm telling you, though, the world that we live in, and I get it, the way you watch the games, the way I used to watch the games, the way a lot of people now consume the game with Red Zone. You and I never watch Red Zone, but people live by Red Zone. It's all about fantasy. So they don't care about Christian McCaffrey from the standpoint of the Niners. They care about their fantasy teams.
Right.
There is something that I enjoy about going back to watching it old school with just the one game and not giving a crap about fantasy purposes or anything like that. There's something, I'm telling you, it was less stressful for me.
Listen, I had one game Thursday, one game Friday, one game Sunday night, one game Monday. I was in heaven with 8 games on Sunday. That is my bliss. That is my bliss.
I get it.
Yeah, the McCaffrey thing was ridiculous. All right. The single most important thing that happened over the weekend was this Sopranos documentary that aired on HBO Saturday night. And it was great because once Nebraska blew out Colorado, then I went to the documentary. It was so freaking good. I cannot recommend it enough if people have not watched it. I know you watched it because we texted about it Sunday morning. Give me the one thing that you enjoyed the most or stuck out to you the most or that you would use to say, hey, you got to watch this for this.
Well, I think the unseen footage, I mean, for a show like that you and I have gone back and rewatched in sequence multiple times over, it's been out for over 20 years. So for a show like that to see something that has anything to do with the show for the first time was cool. So we saw a lot of those, the auditions or whatever. And then the interviews behind it were great too. I learned a lot from it myself. Maybe I'm not as caught up as other Sopranos fans, but it was, I wanted more. Again, they leave me wanting more.
Right.
But I would say because of the behind the scenes footage, like give me another 2 hours of that. Yeah. The behind the scenes footage or whatever, the auditions that we haven't seen before, probably be top stuff.
Yeah. The two things, I mean, they showed you the auditions that they held for casting the show. You saw all these other people who auditioned to be Tony Soprano. I thought it was interesting that the show, I think I knew this, the show wanted Lorraine Bracco to be Carmela. She wanted to be Melfi. The Tony Sirico audition for Paulie was hysterical. Seeing Stevie Ray Zahn,
he's great,
was unbelievable. The other thing I thought that was interesting was when David Chase said, there were many, many interesting things, but this one stuck with me. When David Chase said, season 1, it wasn't supposed to be a series. And he even said it was supposed to be a movie and then it was supposed to end after season 1, I think is what he had said. And he said season 1 was supposed to end with Tony smothering his mother to death. That's how the season was supposed to end. But then in real life, Nancy Marchand was very sick, and she told David Chase, please, I just want to keep working. So he changed the ending. Now, I don't know what they would have done in season 2. If Tony kills his mother, I mean, you would assume he's going to jail, although he got away with crime throughout the whole series. But maybe he was going to smother her at her house. The way it played out, he goes to the Green Grove, or it's the hospital where he attempts to smother her. If he does it in a public place, then I don't know how he has season 2. So it was probably supposed to smother her maybe in her house, and that's how season 1 was supposed to end.
You know what was fascinating now that you say that makes me think of it? The way that the writers, Chase and then the other writers, would explain how they tried to soften Tony at times, or make him likable, or if you go too far and have him kill this guy away at Meadows School, he's not going to be likable. And how do you have the main character not like that dynamic? After watching it for years and knowing how I feel about the characters, shit, like that was some intense, like behind the scenes insight that I would never think of. And they had a perfect balance of it throughout the course of the series.
The specific example of what Sal's talking about there is in season 1, I think it's episode 4 or 5. I think it's titled College. Tony takes Meadow to go visit a college, ends up strangling a guy who he sees out from the witness protection program who flipped. And HBO was livid at David Chase. They did not want Tony shown on camera strangling someone, they thought that would end the show because no one would end up rooting for Tony. Clearly HBO was wrong, and it just shows you these, let the people who create the TV do the TV, and the executives should be quiet. But David Chase won that battle, and thank God, and the rest is history.
Right, but there also is something about the pushback too, or the writers giving opinion where maybe Chase would have taken it to an even darker spot at certain times. What the hell's her name? Christie's girlfriend, Adriana. Yeah. How when they ended up killing her off, how they didn't actually show it. I never thought of that from a cinematic perspective.
Right.
But like they didn't want to show her character actually get it where everybody else did on the show. I like those things, the tidbits.
Well, they had no problem showing Dr. Melfi's rape, which was But I will say, for me, this is just me personally, the one scene in the entire run of the series that now I'm not one of these people, like I have a lot of people who'll say like they can't watch Curb, for instance, because it makes them cringe and it makes them. I don't have that with TV shows. I know TV shows are fake. I'm not an idiot. I can figure it out. I know it's not real. So I don't have that, oh my God, I'm cringing, I'm embarrassed, blah, blah, blah. There was only one moment in the entire run of The Sopranos where I felt a little like, now this is a little rough. And that was when Ralphie kills the stripper from the bottom thing.
Same thing. I'm actually in my rewatch, I'm actually up to that scene.
That was the only time where I said to myself, okay, this is a little tough.
The Melfi scene was bad.
Graphic.
And then they explained kind of why they thought it was necessary to show that. And I remember feeling like the whole point is to get us to feel a certain way. I was like, tell them.
Right.
We all wanted that, but they explained so then maybe I wouldn't have felt that strongly if I didn't see it play out. But I'm with you. That there wasn't, maybe there was a need for that because then we all wanted Ralphie killed so bad and then he finally got it. Right. That was a part of it. We didn't like Ralphie, and then he did this thing that was even incomprehensibly bad. So I get what you're saying, but I agree that was uncomfortable to watch.
All right. Well, if you haven't seen it, it's on Max. It's a 2-part series, but they're in both parts Saturday night, and it's like 4 hours total, so 3.5 hours. So make sure you watch that in between the football. And then I think it came out. It must have come out right after we taped last week or the day after. But then Netflix dropped the trailer for the Vince McMahon documentary. I think it's going to be 6 parts.
6 parts?
I believe that's what it is. It comes out, I'll look it up, but I'm pretty sure it comes out on September 25th. So it's coming out soon. And I'm going to be fascinated. This is what I said to, we actually, Sal and I briefly discussed this. We texted about it. And I'll say this. This is what I said to you. The interviews with all the wrestlers, like you see these sit-down interviews with, The Rock and John Cena and Hulk Hogan or whoever, they were all done before the latest scandal and the sex trafficking and sexual assault accusations and trial that's going to happen, I guess, eventually, or whatever the case is. Like, that was all done before. So I think that makes it very, very dicey on how Netflix handles all that. So I'm going to be fascinated to see, because listen, you just can't do a documentary now on how Vince McMahon built the WWE, made it into what it is, and all this stuff. You've got to get into what's happened lately. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how they pull that off, given that everything was taped with the wrestlers before the accusations.
And if I were The Rock or John Cena, I'd be like, what the hell? You're going to use my edited clip where you interviewed me before all this stuff. Like, unless they clearly say, like, this was shot, maybe they will, and maybe that takes away from it so people understand. But I did not know that until you told me that it was shot after all the most recent drama. But there was enough in Vince's life anyway. I'm in the middle of listening to the book, The Ringmaster. Have you read that one?
What's that one? I don't think so. I'm not familiar.
It's not great. It's a Vince McMahon book. I forget the exact.
I haven't read it.
Yeah, it's not bad, and it goes into some bad detail, but it's also just like aggregating a lot of other wrestler books and putting stuff together about Vince McMahon and how he took over. Although you do learn some stuff about his childhood. I did not know that he never met his father until he was 14.
Right.
That he was abused as a child, whatever. So it goes into a lot of different stuff. Goes into the rape thing with him and the female referee years ago. So there is some stuff in there. But overall, I'm looking for more behind the scenes stuff and what went on, and not just the stuff that I know about, like the Attitude Era or the beginning of WrestleMania. I know about that. I want some dirt. If this is not going to have the legit, like, what was going on and why he's become vilified, then what's the point of watching?
Yeah. It's 6 episodes, an hour each episode. So 6 hours total. And
all at one shot, or they're going to slow release?
I don't know. That I don't know. I don't know what Netflix
usually does it all, I think.
Right.
They usually.
And this is what it says in the Deadline story. According to Netflix, the documentary is culled from over 200 hours of interviews with McMahon himself prior to his resignation, his family members, business associates. So, I think the people who made this doc are in a tough spot, because I think the documentary was done and ready to go before all this came out with the sex trafficking allegations. So, listen, I'm interested because it's Vince McMahon. I'm interested because Bill Simmons is behind this. I know he's a legit wrestling fan. So I don't think it's going to be the nonsense, like you said, like, oh, here's how he beat WCW in the Monday Night Wars, which we've seen 8 billion times. Right. And now you have this really disgusting case, if it's, true.
Right. But we're not getting answers to that. So this will be
nice. I don't know. We don't know that yet. Yet.
That is true. This will be good. Look, I'm going to watch it regardless.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's going to be the final piece to the puzzle that we're all curious about.
I texted Bill Simmons to see if he would come on to promote it. No response. So someone tell Bill to come on, please.
How long ago?
Yesterday.
All right.
It's only been a day. It's only been
Monday
a day.
Night Football. Yeah, it's only a day. You got to let it breathe a little bit. Does he normally respond? Have you had a text relationship with him? Oh.
Yeah. He doesn't respond. I think in the past it does take him a little bit of time. So
okay.
Oh, you just reminded me. I was going to talk about this Larry David thing, but we'll talk about that next week. I'm going to end with this. I have a great story that I want to get your take on that has nothing to do with me. Okay. I can't believe I forgot about this, but I just remembered. Okay. So you're not on Facebook.
Right.
And I have a Facebook account that I use to post my column, but I'm not on Facebook. And I've said this many times. I don't respect people on Facebook. I think if you're on Facebook, you should reevaluate some things. And listen, I say this as someone who's on Twitter, which is a disgusting, vile place. And I have no respect for myself for being on Twitter, but I have even less respect for you if you're on Facebook. Okay. So, buddy of mine says, this is in a group chat, he says he has a story. He goes on Facebook. So that's a mistake. Well, and I told him, I don't respect you because you're on Facebook. And his cousin posts a picture of his newborn baby. The baby looks like it's maybe 6 months old, 3, 4, 5, 6, in that area. And the baby's wearing an Eagles shirt. My buddy happens to be a Patriots fan. Okay. He comments on the picture, gross.
Oh, God. You can't do that.
So then he gets a private message. Let me read this. I assume you were commenting on the Eagles when you said that the picture of my granddaughter was gross. But I thought it was the most insulting and mean comment that I ever saw on Facebook to publicly say that a picture of a baby was gross. Your take on this story, Salicata?
I do think that it should be fairly obvious that it was meant. Like, nobody in their right mind, even if they thought the baby was in fact gross looking, they wouldn't post that on Facebook. So it had to be clearly about what the child was wearing. However, that's what you get when you leave a comment on Facebook. Everything's up for grabs. And there's no way in hell that that's the grossest comment on Facebook. Well, I would suggest to that grandmother to spend a few minutes on some of the comments there.
Yeah. I mean, listen, maybe cute baby gross shirt would have been a better way to go about it. Right. Obviously, the real way to go about it is don't use Facebook, and especially don't comment on Facebook.
Yeah.
But yes, I did think the grossest comment she's ever seen, but it's the grandmother.
I know.
Like, how would your mother react if someone put a picture, it said gross on a picture of your daughter?
Yeah, of course. It'd be the end of the world.
Oh, what? Okay. Yeah.
Probably. I mean, my mother, I don't know. Who knows? I would hope she has more common sense than that. She's not on Facebook, which is a good start, but
Yes.
they always would look for a way to take that insulting where you shouldn't. I get why grandma did in this particular case, but obviously, gross is the wrong word. Just say the eagle stock or something like that. And even then, that's not the right time to do it.
The visual of it is great because it's a picture of this really cute baby laying in a crib with an Eagles thing, and it just says gross underneath.
It's funny, but which is why he sent the comment. But
it also goes back to my other point. I mean, sports fans are just so deranged.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You got to write gross on Facebook about a kid because you're a Patriots fan.
Yeah, right. With the Eagles, no less. Like if you're a Giant fan, maybe, but a Patriot fan with the Eagles, what do you care?
Yeah, I reprimanded my buddy. Yeah, and the comment in the group chat, she's being, the most insulting and mean comment she's ever seen on Facebook, ? Having said that, you can't call my baby gross. That feels fair. I said, this might be my all-time favorite story, and I will be discussing it with Sal on the podcast this week.
Now, you have both the person who had the baby and...
No, I don't know the person. This was his cousin. I wrote, my honest assessment, the person who comes out looking the worst, and this is you for one simple reason. You're on Facebook, using Facebook, commenting on Facebook. Yeah.
On a baby picture when you're bringing in your sports fandom to it, instead of just saying congratulations and keeping it moving.
Gross.
That's the wrong word to use in that spot. Ooh.
That's one of those, what's the, context and translation there that go well.
Now, the real question is, if I did something like that, how would my wife respond? She'd annihilate me. Is this guy single? Is he married? What, your buddy?
Oh no, married. Has a kid.
Yeah, so then he should know better. Like,
but why would you get annihilated? Because you're friends with him?
No, I'm saying like if my wife saw me leave a comment, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That said gross under a picture of a baby. She'd be like, "What are you, an idiot?" Like, well, no, he's wearing a stupid Eagles shirt. I don't care what it is. You don't say gross for the come on. His wife's got to be even more pissed at him, I would think.
I'll find out. I'll report back next week. All right, Sal. Enjoy week 2 of Giants, Commanders, and Jets, Titans. And we will see you next week. All right, take it easy. All right, my thanks to Kevin Clark and Sal Licata, and to you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you've missed any recent episodes, go into the archives, check them out. We had Scott Van Pelt from ESPN on the podcast last week, Brian Curtis from The Ringer 2 weeks ago, Kirk Herbstreit, Chris Mad Dog Russo, all recent guests on SI Media with Jimmy Traina. So if you missed any, give them a listen and subscribe, rate, and review. All right, that wraps it up for this week. We'll see you next week. Stay safe and take care.